I am so misunderstood that people misunderstand me even when I tell them I am misunderstood. It is tragicomic to see that all this knowledge and understanding exercises no power at all over men's lives, that their lives do not express in the remotest way what they have understood, but rather the opposite. Since boredom advances and boredom is the root of all evil, no wonder, then, that the world goes backwards, that evil spreads. This can be traced back to the very beginning of the world. The gods were bored, therefore they created human beings. I have only one confidant, and that is the silence of night. Prayer is listening. Intelligence has got the upper hand to such an extent that it transforms the real task into an unreal trick and reality into a play. I am convinced that God is love. This thought has for me a primitive lyrical validity. When it is present to me, I am unspeakably blissful. When it is absent, I long for it more vehemently than does the lover for his object. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, the other is to refuse to believe what is true. Another translation says : there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't so, the other is to refuse to believe what is so. The person who praises God is on the tracks of justice. To be a teacher in the right sense is to be a learner. I am not a teacher, only a fellow student. When all combine in every way to make everything easier, people will want difficulty. I conceived it as my task to make difficulties everywhere. The crucial thing is to find a truth which is truth for me, to find the idea for which I am willing to live and die. I found I had less and less to say until finally I became silent and began to listen. I discovered in the silence the voice of God. A poet is not an apostle, he drives out devils only by the power of the devil. The more a person limits himself, the more resourceful he becomes. The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. But one must not think ill of the paradox, for the paradox is the passion of thought, and the thinker without the paradox is like the lover without passion, a mediocre fellow. A possibility is a hint from God. One must follow it. Faith begins precisely where thinking leaves off. The thinker without a paradox is like a lover without a feeling, a paltry mediocrity. Adversity draws men together and produces beauty and harmony in life's relationships, just as the cold of winter produces ice flowers on the window panes, which vanish with the warmth. The human race in the course of time has taken the liberty of softening and softening Christianity until at last we have contrived to make it exactly the opposite of what it is in the New Testament. My depression is the most faithful mistress I have known. No wonder, then, that I return the love. There are many people who reach their conclusions about life like schoolboys. They cheat their master by copying the answer out of a book without having worked the sum out for themselves. Just as in the great moment of resignation one does not meditate but chooses, now the task is to gain proficiency in repeating the impassioned choice and, existing, to express it in existence. On the whole, the longing for solitude is a sign that there still is spirit in a person, and is a measure of what spirit there is. The question is asked in ignorance, by one who does not even know what can have led him to ask it. In relation to the labyrinth of her heart, every young girl is an Ariadne. She owns the thread by which one can find one's way through it, but she owns it without herself knowing how to use it. There is something almost cruel about the Christians being placed in a world which in every way wants to pressure him to do the opposite of what God bids him to do. Sleep, and death, you promise nothing, you hold everything. Patience is necessary, and one cannot reap immediately where one has sown. What a misfortune to be a woman, and yet the worst misfortune is not to understand what a misfortune it is. Twaddle, rubbish, and gossip is what people want, not action. The secret of life is to chatter freely about all one wishes to do and how one is always being prevented, and then do nothing. Love is all, it gives all, and it takes all. I stick my finger into existence and it smells of nothing. The good is by virtue my willing it, otherwise it has no existence. The commandment is that you shall love, but when you understand life and yourself, then it is as if you should not need to be commanded, because to love human beings is still the only thing worth living for. Without this life you really do not live. Every day I walk myself into a state of well-being and walk away from every illness. I have walked myself into my best thoughts. It is better to try something and fail than to try nothing and succeed. The result may be the same, but you will not be. We always grow more through defeats than victories. Listen to the cry of a woman in labor at the hour of giving birth. Look at the dying man's struggle at his last extremity, and then tell me whether something that begins and ends thus could be intended for enjoyment. In the deepest sense, the being in a state of sin is the sin. The particular sins are not the continuation of sin, they are expressions of its continuation. The truth must essentially be regarded as in conflict with this world. The world has never been so good, and will never become so good that the majority will desire the truth. Human relations are like the irregular verbs in a number of languages, where nearly all verbs are irregular. In the Christianity of Christendom, the cross has become something like the child's hobby horse and trumpet. What is the New Testament? A handbook for those who are to be sacrificed. He follows his heart's desire, but having found what he sought, he wanders round to everyone's door with his song and speech, so that all can admire the hero as he does, be proud of the hero as he is. To stand on one leg and prove God's existence is a very different thing from going down on one's knees and thanking him. I divide my time as follows: half the time I sleep, the other half I dream. I never dream when I sleep, for that would be a pity, for sleeping is the highest accomplishment of genius. There is no greater evil one can suffer than to hate reasonable discourse. If I could prescribe only one remedy for all the ills of the modern world, I would prescribe silence. Whoever has the world's treasures has them, no matter how he got them. In the world of the spirit it is otherwise.